Hey, what's up? So, real quick, here's a story that might encourage some people. So, your situation can change for the better at any time. So, a while back, several years ago, I was walking through apartments because I needed an appointment. At this time, I was recruiting for the United States Army, and I was randomly knocking on doors to try to get an appointment with somebody. Because if I went back to my job with no appointment, my boss was gonna chew me out. And so this day I was not gonna get chewed out. And so I knocked on this one particular door, and this female opened the door, and she asked me who I was looking for. And now back in this day, I did a lot of crazy stuff. And so I made up a name that a guy had scheduled an appointment with me, and she's like, well, he's not here. And so she's like, hey, what apartment number did he give you? And I looked at her apartment number, and I said 129. And she's like, well, that's that's the correct apartment number, but there's no guy by that name here. And so I'm throwing a fit, and I'm like, man, I'm losing my job, man. And is there any way you can help me out? She's like, well, how can I help? I'm like, well, I'm supposed to give a presentation to him, but since you're here, can I give it to you? And so by this time, her roommate peeks around the door and is like, who is that? And so she's like, well, some guy wants to give us some type of army presentation or whatever. And he wants to come in. And her roommate is like looking at me, and she's like, yeah, he can come in. So I go inside the apartment, and I was a little bit more wild back then. And so I grabbed their remote, and I'm like flipping channels on their remote. And I'm like, what y'all watching? And they were like, well, we was watching BET, you know? And so I'm like, all right, so let me give y'all the presentation. So I give them brochures, and I'm like talking real fast to give them this presentation. And they're looking at me like, it's time for you to leave. And finally, they basically kicked me out the apartment. So long story short, 2 weeks passed, and I'm in my office, and I was making cold calls to make appointments. That's basically what I did back in the day, just make cold calls, cold knocks, making appointments all the time. I try and make appointments. Anyway, in walks the Air Force recruiter who just so happened to work across the hall from me, and he has these two females with me, and I recognized them immediately. And he's almost like behind them, shoving them towards me. And he's like, Sergeant Crumbley, these two ladies want to speak with you. I'm like, hey, what's up? How can I help y'all? And so they're like, hey, look, we so sorry we kicked you out of our apartment. We are so sorry, but we need a job. They were getting evicted. They were, at the time, it was they were working for Continental, which Continental today has been bought by United here in Houston. They were working for Continental, and Continental had laid off a whole bunch of flight attendants, and they had gotten laid off, and they didn't have any money to pay their rent. And so, long story short, I was able to help one of the females, but the other one I couldn't help because she couldn't pass the ASVAB test, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. And so I was able to help one, and she was just so thankful that I just randomly knocked on her door. So sometimes opportunity knocks, and I'm here knocking at your door. So if you need help with finding an apartment, holla at your boy. Can you dig it?